to order. I have to wake you up. Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for attending. We have a quorum and seek motion to approve the agenda laid out in front of you. Thank you. Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. The minutes of the September 27th, 2018 board meeting are found on the next 2 pages of your packet. Seek approval.
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Wahab.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. I'm moving to the recognition and also an update from the American Public Transportation Authority that Dave's going to give us. We have 2 individual recognitions and also recognition for our Maintenance Rodeo Award winners. Exciting part of our board meeting that everyone really enjoys. So first up is Michelle Goddard-Heaton. Yeah.
Because my notes are out of order again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow.
So, I come here every day.
Man, I'm used to that. Michelle began work at CDTA in 1993. 25 years. 25 years.
I know.
Really?
Now you know my age.
Should be.
It's December. I'll look for birthday cards.
Following in the footsteps, a little bit of a common theme here, of her father and Uncle Bill Jones. Her Uncle Bill was a bus operator for over 20 years. And I kind of found out by accident, I have well, it's not really a fan club, but I have a group of people over the years that write letters to me, email, call, all of them very satisfied with our service when they write an email or write a letter or call. And I found out there was even some of Michelle's family members that were writing me letters telling me how great the service was. Or maybe not so great. So Michelle's roots are very, very deep here at CPTA. She was one of the first full-time Star bus operators. Some of you may remember back 25 years ago when you were hired at Star, you were all hired as part-time operators and then graduated to full-time and then graduated to other things. But she's one of the first full-time operators. She transitioned to Star Dispatch in 2000, and when she transitioned to the Albany fixed route operation as a supervisor, she was the only female among 17 male transportation supervisors. What's the big deal? Think about that. Think about that. And think about 18 years ago. That's a very short period of time, but I would venture to say things are a lot different than they were then. And especially in our industry, it's been a tough cut, honestly. And Michelle has gotten it done. As a supervisor, she worked under the guidance of Tony Greco. Tony was superintendent here, a very easygoing, soft-spoken guy.
Oh my God,
Easy to get along with.
Who's that?
Yeah, and to show you how difficult it was, there was a method to his madness, actually. Tony made Michelle do nothing but road release for 4 months.
Yes, when I was promoted to supervisor.
So she was promoted to a supervisor, and she made road release, which basically doesn't involve a whole lot of thinking. But there was a method to the madness. You got to know the route network even better, right?
Absolutely.
And she uses that today as a scheduler, as assistant manager of service planning. What a scheduler does is essentially sets the schedule, so to speak, for bus operators. It's all done in advance, and it's an elaborate and complicated system. You remember last month we awarded the maintenance contract to Giro for our HASTA software. That's what Michelle works with all day long, to build schedules, to modify schedules, things of that nature. She enjoys most about her current position is having her hand in the pot, basically, making someone's life better and easier, whether it be a customer or a bus operator. When she isn't solving CDTA service planning puzzles, That came from you, I guess.
Yes.
Surface planning puzzles. She enjoys riding her bike, kayaking, and taking trips to Maine. She's also an amazing photographer. I've seen some of her work, and you'll have to check it out. She has a lot of examples in her office. You used to have a website. You still have a website? Do I make a...
No,
That's
fine, thank you.
I'll give you the opportunity.
No, that's very kind. Thank you. I'll hand out business cards later.
She likes her partner, Rob McElroy, also known as Mac, who's her best buddy in our training department. They are some of the two peas in a pod, that's for sure. But without CDTA, she wouldn't have met her wife, Lorraine, who she's very thankful for. Lorraine used to be our manager and stuff. She went on to bigger things.
Yes, bigger, yes.
And it's so,
That's true.
but she's had a great career here. She's done some wonderful things to help a lot of people. And we thank you for 25 years of great service.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you again. Really appreciate that.
All right, hold on.
Hold on.
Ms. Perez. Morning. I'm good. How are you?
I know. Same to you.
She's always here. Yeah, Joe, you've been here.
20 years.
Yeah. This is Michelina Perez. She just whispered to me. She said,
I whisper.
I get, yeah, you can't whisper. I get this letter at home. What the hell are they sending me a letter for? She said, then I open it, and I see it's from you. And the only reason I knew it was from you is she crossed out Michelina and called me the Mick. I said, well, I'm glad I'm still one of the few that do that, right? Yeah. Before life, I'll read this. Before life at CDJ, Michelina was a hairdresser.
Can you tell by the I don't have time to do mine now.
I can turn it over to her. She'll do a 15-minute stand-up, and we'd all be, I think, a lot happier. But a CDTA bus operator at the time, Bobby Kelly, who was also known as a singing bus operator, great singing voice, does a great Sinatra, and actually is well into his 80s, retired on the east coast of Florida, and is still entertaining professionally. I get emails usually once a month from his wife telling me, giving me the schedule, so when I'm in town, stop and see him. But Bobby Kelly used to come into a convenience store that she was working at and said, you know, you got a great personality. You would make one heck of a bus operator at CDTA. She laughed at him and went on her way. But the more and more she thought about it, more and more she said, you know, that idea is not crazy. She applied, and the rest is history. She's always worked here in Albany. Started, again, familiar theme as a star bus operator, worked there for about a year, and then transitioned to fixed route operation. She was on, early in her career, what we call the extra list, which means a different route every single day, or most every single day. It's sort of force-feeding the CDTA system to the bus operator, but there's a method to the madness, and that actually is beneficial, because now she could probably do just about any route going.
Unless they keep changing them.
I know, we don't want to hold you to that. Landy's writing this down. Currently, Mick works on Route 12, Washington Avenue, up and down Washington Avenue, one of, if not the busiest routes in the system. Are very seldom alone on that bus. Never. Very seldom is it not full, and that's why she likes it. She's busy, makes the time go by, and if you haven't figured it out, Mick likes to talk to people. You've always talked to me, and I'll give you credit there. She says a steady income and great benefits are really the big reason why she stayed at CDJ for 25 years. The job has allowed her to have a great work-life balance with her family. Her co-workers aren't too bad either, according to Mick. She said it's really hard to find such nice people where you sort of feel like family when you're at work. When she's not driving, Mick can be found taking care of her 3-year-old granddaughter, cooking, and being with her family. We could do this every 5 years for a long time. Keep coming back. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's the boots. Thank you.
All right, so next we're gonna switch gears, and instead of personal awards, we're gonna talk about a group of guys. So every year now, for the past several years, right? 3, 4, 5 years?
That big one?
No, that we've had
Probably 7, maybe.
7 years or so. We've had a rodeo competition for our maintenance technicians. It's a little different than the bus rodeo, because what we're doing, you pre-qualify, so it's the best of the best. But if you've been to the rodeo, it's basically these fellas and women, we have a team now of women, it's got guys and gals, I'm very proud of that, go through a series of problems where they have to go through and find the problem, and understand what it is, explain it, and talk about how they would fix it. They navigate the course sort of like a real life situation. We try to make it real life. I don't know if it, you guys is.
Close enough.
Close enough. This was held back on the 13th of September. And this is our top team. It's kind of a complicated scoring system, but somebody, probably Waxman, has it figured out. And we're honored that they're here today. Ken Steger Jr., another long, deep history here. His dad in the maintenance department. Howard Teal is here, and I never get this name right. I may need some help, Ken.
Jotendra.
Yeah. Sudeco, right?
So there.
Even he can't get it right. I apologize. He's not here because he worked the midnight shift yesterday. So as much as he'd want to be here, he thought sleep would be a little bit better. But these guys have won the competition now 3 years in a row.
3 for 2 for me. 2 for him.
3 for you, 2 for him. So this really is the best of the best. These guys are technicians, mechanics, maybe perhaps in your world. This is very skilled labor, very skilled labor. These guys, are, I hate to say this, but these are marketable skills, but they've got them right here at CDTA. They can do virtually anything. They can diagnose any problem. I remember the day when Lance had got to come down to the garage and look at what a group of guys did. And we can now drop a new engine in a bus in the blink of an eye. We can build transmission, we can build front ends and things like that, and it's all because of fast like this. So what these competitions do is highlight how good they really are. So maybe a round of applause for our maintenance. Appreciate it. Thank you, Conrad. So the maintenance department, we talk about all the time. We talk about the operating statistics. Steve Waxman only gives them 30 minutes. But I just don't want to underestimate the skill that's involved. These are guys that you would find in these 2 guys and their teammates. You would find in just about any garage here in the capital region. They would be the top guys there. So we're lucky to have them. And the 2 bus operators, the bus operator, Nicolene Perez, all joking aside, is one of our best. Reliable, dependable, great with customers, not too much phases her. And last but certainly not least, Michelle Eaton, an example of the career ladder. Started as a star operator, worked her way through, became a street supervisor, and is now in, arguably one of the more important functions, most important functions in the company. And the work that she does affects everything that we do. It affects the quality of life of our bus operators. It certainly affects our budget because the schedules aren't right and aren't cut in the most efficient way. It's going to show in the budget. So thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you, and congratulations again. these 4 employees are just like a small snapshot of all the amazing employees that we have here at CDT. It's such an honor to be able to talk about them and celebrate their achievements. It's really, truly an honor, so thank you. Mr. Steckrow is going to give us an update on the American Transportation Authority.
Before
So-
Dave starts, I just want to let you all know that it's in my activity report, but Dave was gracious enough to give us an hour last week where he came in and spoke to our all authority staff, at our all authority staff meeting, about 75 people, a full room, and he certainly had their attention. They learned a lot. It's very helpful. And it was just, I think, a really positive thing for us to do. It was a different kind of connection between board member and staff. It almost was, Dave wasn't a board member. Dave was sort of this outside thought leader, someone that we brought in for the hour. It was a refreshing change of pace, but most importantly, thanks, Dave, for giving us. I know you have a lot of pulls on your time. We appreciate it.
It was fun.
So before we get going, though, we want to share with you the video that we share with the staff. I think this is a great way to introduce Dave Stackrow, CDTA, Common Apple.
Please welcome our new chair, David Stackrow.
My Here is After Chair is about serving you, telling your stories, advancing goals that are worthy of our collective mission on creating a better future for public transportation and the communities we serve. There is no greater dignity than in that, and no more important role as your chair.
APTA sat down with newly elected Chair David Stackrow to talk to him about his perspectives on his new term.
The 3 areas of focus for the board this year that I've set. First is the strategic plan. I think if we can accomplish a new strategic plan for board approval by the end of 2019, I think that will be a great accomplishment. It'll help to set the framework for where we move as an association, and ultimately in helping to set the resources that are available to our membership so that we can help our members. Secondly, I think another key area of focus for the board to work on is the new mobility paradigm and the challenges that we face as transit systems and as an industry at large, and how we handle those challenges. One of the things that I think we can do is to continue the conversation, but most importantly, we need to get a seat at the table to make sure that we're being heard along with the technology companies that are actually setting some of these other options for people that are in some ways diverting our transit riders to other options because they may be a little more convenient for our customers. And then thirdly, rallying around one voice, speaking with one voice as a membership when we ask Congress to allocate dollars to us when the next reauthorization process occurs. 2020 is the expiration of the current FAST Act. It's quickly approaching for us. And if we don't give Congress a clear direction from us as to what we need most from them, it makes it difficult for them to get things passed. And I think we need to set clear vision. We need to have clear consensus around what it is we're asking.
With an ambitious agenda ahead of him, Stackrow's confident that he can rely on APTA's members.
People serving people. Those 3 words are what brought me to this stage. I imagine they're why most of you are here this morning too. It's the reason we chose to make public transit our life's work. What we do makes people's lives better.
APTA congratulates APTA Chair David Stackrow on his new role and wishes him much success.
Please welcome our new chair.
Once was enough. So I think, and I certainly won't take an hour today like I did with the authority staff, and it was great to be here. There were some really good questions after I did some foundational work and explained what it is that I'll be doing in the next year. It is only a year, and as much as at some points in that year it may seem long, the goals that I've set are ones that will continue on
beyond my year as chair. We won't have a reauthorization in place when I finish in October of 2019. But one of the things that's important, I think, is to build a base where we get more of our members in agreement that we need to give Congress maybe 5 or 10 things that they can work to get approved through the legislative process, instead of giving them a list of essentially something from every member interest within APTA. And that's what we've done in the past, is we've given a long list. We've left it up to Congress to prioritize for us, and Congress thinks they've accomplished something in getting 10 things on our list passed, and they've said, we think we're doing something good for you, and yet we don't know whether those are your top 10 priorities or not. They may be your lowest 10. So one of the things with APTA that's wonderful is that the membership is very diverse, and there's a lot of interests that are represented. But when we go to Congress, we really need to be concise and make sure that we're asking for things with one voice. We can't have members that are advocating against us within our own membership, and that's also happened in the past. So as much as there are only a few words in building consensus, that will be a big part of my year, because it's the year after me that will actually bring our list to Congress and start to actually advocate. So right now, the legislative steering committee at APTA is in the process of putting together what the top priorities are. And sometime later this year, we will bring those to the members and start working to build consensus. The industry itself is facing things that it hasn't faced, you could almost argue, since we had horse and buggies and moved to cars. Autonomous vehicles are here. We don't know how that's going to impact transit yet, but it will have an impact on all of us. We need to figure out how that technology is going to fit into what we do and how we'll use that technology. And then the other mobility options that we all see, we all experience ride sharing with Ubers and Lyfts. We have bike sharing here. CDTA has moved to be an administrator for taxi service. That's another mobility option. So transit authorities across the country are moving more toward being either mobility providers or mobility integrators, not just being transportation authorities. So APTA's strategic plan, which will, hopefully that will be my one accomplishment, will that be by October of 2019, we will have a new strategic plan for APTA. But that plan will take into account not only what APTA needs to do, but also, as I said on the video, set the resources that APTA has available in order to make sure that we're doing the most we can for our members to help our members navigate this new mobility paradigm. So it's really, I think it's a great time to be in transit. We certainly have our challenges. The FAST Act expires in September of 2020. That's our 5-year reauthorization, so every 5 years, if Congress is able to accomplish it, and it doesn't always happen that they're able to accomplish it, but it at least gives us a 5-year, it's a known amount of revenue, and that allows us then to do planning around that known amount of revenue. There's some certainty there. So I think, I'm really looking forward to it. I will have a lot of travel. I appreciate all that CDTA has done to help to put me in this position. Jamie Watson was my right-hand person at the annual conference. I think we logged in one day about 5 miles each, and never left the one building that we were in to log that 5 miles. So, I appreciate that Jamie's available to support me. And I also appreciate that, Corey and Denise were there, which was great, and a lot of senior staff were there to hear my speech on Monday morning, as well as to see me actually get elected on Saturday. It was a nice security blanket for me to look out and see a whole bunch of friendly faces, and then they all left, but that's okay. They were there for the important part. As board chair, again, my role is really to lead the board. It's not to lead the association. We have a CEO and we have great staff at APTA, but the board at APTA is about 110 members. So again, not only is the 1,500 membership group diverse, but because the board represents the membership group, the board is also very diverse. There were probably about 80 board members in attendance for my first board meeting at the annual conference. The meeting I think it went very well. There was a lot of good input from the board, and that's one of my goals, is to engage the board. We talk about that here and engaging the board. I have found that with AFTA, you sit at the front table and it's a lot of talking out. It's not a lot of hearing back. And if we're going to build consensus around a strategic plan and then ultimately reauthorization, we need to make sure that the board has input from the board to the leadership, so that we're at least with that 110-person group, we're starting with a strong foundation and building consensus. So I'm excited. My year started in Nashville, as you know. Steve Bland, who was a former CEO here, is the CEO in Nashville. That made that nice, and my year will conclude in New York City. The annual conference for 2019 is in New York, so it'll be a little bit like coming home. And then my third year is in the leadership chain. You basically serve 3 years. You're vice chair, chair, and then one of the 4 officers is the immediate past chair, and then you're done. So as much as it will be a lot of time and travel, there's a limit to it, and it will end, which is nice. So anything I can do to help, I certainly want to do that. I'm a resource. As I said to staff, I often share CDTA stories when I'm asked for examples on the national level. We are a cutting-edge organization in transit. The things that we're doing are things that other agencies may not do for 2 or 3 years behind us. So that's one of the great things I find about being involved here, is that we've always been willing to take challenges on, take some risk, and know that as long as we're making strong decisions in what we do, that our risk of failure is certainly minimized, even though there is some risk. There's some risk of failure when you try untested things. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
If I can just say, it was really an honor to be there, to see you move into the chair's position, because we've watched you over the years be so involved in AFTA, and I think it's a great honor for CDTA and for you. So thank you. And just for anybody who's not been to an AFTA annual meeting, any of the board members, I would honestly encourage you to go, because it's just amazing to see, as you said, the membership, the breadth of variety of members, and get to meet other people. You just feel like you're part of a much bigger thing than being here, so I think it's important.
Just one last plug, picking up on what Denise said. Last week in November, I think I sent everybody, if you can spare a day or two, leadership summit. And I think the reason it kind of caught my eye for board members is there is a whole track devoted just to board member issues, governance issues, things that we might struggle with here. So that's part of the AFTA redo. This conference is the first time. It's kind of putting together pieces of what used to be other conferences. So there'll be board members, people like me, support staff, different specialties, sort of all mixed, but there's a separate track for board members. Take a peek at it. If you're interested, let us know. We'll register you. We'll arrange travel. Get done. The nice thing about Washington is you can get in and out of there pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I've looked at the agenda, and I think AFTA's trying very hard to focus a lot of the agenda items on the changing mobility environment. The board track for the one day is really governance. It's really governance driven, and a lot of it's peer-to-peer. So, panelists will be other board members who are addressing issues that affect boards and board members. It's also probably going to be a one-time only thing. The original intent of this summit was to bring together board members, CEOs, and business members in an environment where we could talk about really high-level issues for the industry. And we thought we would be able to move away from the 3 separate conferences. So CEOs have their own conference, board members have their own conference, business members have their own conference. And there was very little opportunity for the 3 groups of leaders in the industry to come together to talk about high-level topics. But one by one, each of the groups decided that they were going to continue to have their own conference and not give up their opportunity to meet as their own group. So this may be a one and done, but we'll see.
Turf wars.
Thanks, Dave. I don't think you would have known when you started your role here at CDTA where this journey would have taken you, and I think combination of your leadership and your just passion and your willingness to give back to a greater cause really brought you to this place. Just knowing who you are and your strong leadership, it's wonderful to serve with you here on this board, and the fact that you're serving now on a much larger, more bigger scale is just such an honor. So
Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment.
I also have a very supporting wife, so.
Well, anyone else have any comments or questions for Dave? We're going to move into our committee portion of the meeting, and Mr. Lahat will give the performance monitoring committee report.
The meeting was held last week on October 23rd. We have 4 action items for board consideration. Today, the first item is Resolution 39-2018 regarding auto and general liability insurance renewal. We provide protection against claims for injury, damage to people and property that may be caused by operations of the business year. The renewal is for 1 year. Our self-insurance retention remains at $2 million with excess insurance coverage for $8 million and $5 million, so there are two levels, and there are 2 different vendors, for a total amount of $13 million in all. The change in vendors is different from previously. New Hampshire had provided it in the past. With this resolution, we have American Alternative Insurance Company for the $8 million policy, and Scottsdale Indemnity for the $5 million property. It is a net savings over prior year, so combined it's $351,004 last year, so it's savings of about $51,700. So the resolution is calling for approval of the 2 policies with American Alternative Insurance Company and Scottsdale Indemnity for a total of $351,004 for 1 year.
Seek a motion to approve resolution 39-2018 found on page 12 of your packet to authorize the purchase of auto and general liability insurance excess coverage.
I will make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Sergio.
Second.
Thank you. Any further, yes, discussion.
I have a question. What is the maximum insured liability that we've had in the past?
We've had this 13 million since about 2004.
How much?
2004,
And what about,
13 million.
so this would cover that? Okay, so that was an exceptional year.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
That it's normally lower and that there was some unusual events that year.
No, we buy certain insurance.
I'm not asking the amount of insurance, the amount of liability that the insurance covers.
That's the other side of the equation. I don't know if I know the answer. Well, no, we've never penetrated it, correct?
Never.
Never. Sort of like your car
Just-
insurance.
It's just a security blanket, but
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
things happen.
it's a pretty thick security blanket. It's pretty heavy.
exactly, so.
But I understand it. Sometimes your car insurance, for example, might go 5 years without an accident. Let's say you already have an accident. This is a little different though. It has to penetrate. So our first, you may want to, the first $2 million is.
Yeah, we're self-insured for the first 2 million mark. It's kind of like a deductible. So we cover anything by CDTA for the first $2 million, and we've never come close to penetrating that $2 million.
Sorry.
Anyone else? And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries.
The next item is with respect to auto physical damage insurance renewal, which insures our vehicles in the event of fire, theft, vandalism, collision, and natural perils. Lexington Insurance has been our carrier for several years. Proposed to keep the rate at $100 of value, which is the same as prior years. So Resolution 40-2018 seeks to retain Lexington Insurance to provide auto physical damage insurance for 1 year, effective November 10, 2018, at a cost of $236,201.
Seek a motion. Thank you, Ms.
I'll second.
Thank you. And any comments? Or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is to approve a contract award for renovation of the operations department. This is for the north side of the administrative offices here at 110 Watervliet Avenue. Will be renovated to update the aging space occupied by the transportation department. An invitation bid was issued for the project, including asbestos abatement, plumbing, electrical, and general contractor work. This is a part of a series of projects that have taken place in the past. Improvement of facilities for transit was one, radio room operations was another. 8 bids were received. Hoosick Valley Contractors was the low bidder for $416,000 plus a 20% contingency. So Resolution 41-2018 calls for an award to Hoosick Valley Contractors, state certified WBE, for $499,200.
Okay, seek a motion to approve resolution number 41-2018, found on page 23 of your packets. Contract award for renovations to the operations department. I'll make a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion or questions on this resolution?
We talked about upgrading the electrical infrastructure to allow for charging electric buses. Is this included in that?
Different pricing.
What we're talking about here is actually the space right below us, from the back wall, literally all the way, actually past that wall. It's the last of the space downstairs that has not been renovated. We've gone all that way. We've done the locker rooms, men's and ladies' room, showers, all that. It's part of the plan to update the whole first floor, which honestly hasn't seen renovation. I can say since I've been working. You all know that's way too long.
It's probably also worth noting that there'll be a future contract let for furniture, fixtures, equipment, security, other items that'll be necessary in a fit of the space.
Anyone else? Any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries.
The final action item is kind of an administrative, ministerial item to accept the state portion of federal grants. CDTA receives federal funds for bus purchases and facility updates through a variety of transit operating and capital assistance programs. The State Department of Transportation requires a CDTA board resolution to accept state funding prior to being reimbursed for eligible expenses. It's a 10% share of the federal grants. To Resolution 42-2018 would set aside the 10% portion for the federal grants, totaling $2,105,985.
We need a motion to accept resolution number 42-2018, accepting $2,105,985 in state funding, found on page 29 of your packets. So moved. Thank you. Thank you. Discussions, comments, happy dance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Take money, right?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries.
The committee also received a report from Sarah Montrose for quarterly internal audit report. The work has been completed on the purchase card audit, which contained several recommendations that the staff is now incorporating. Upcoming audit items include a revenue audit, warranty processes, PCI activities, and key performance indicators. She also gave us an update on her continuing education activities.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this report? Ms. Figueroa, it's gonna give the investment committee report.
Okay, the investment committee met prior to the last board meeting. Those minutes were sent out, and we reviewed the status of our investments, and everything's in order. We've made a few adjustments, and the committee will meet again in December.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I'm going to give the Board Operations Committee report. We met October 17th here at 7:45 a.m. We met for the second time under a new structure. We had a great discussion around several topics, and we're looking forward to building the committee and its role as a support vehicle for our governance program. We talked about the meeting scheduled for the holiday season and set the board meeting for Wednesday, December 12th. The 4 committees will meet in the weeks preceding. I believe that schedule has been dispersed to everyone at this time. So, a note about a retreat to discuss the many moving parts to financing construction of the River Corridor BRT line and its ongoing operation. The retreat will be hosted by the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee on Thursday, December 6th. It will be held here in the boardroom beginning at 8:30 and lasting for about 2.5 hours. All members are encouraged to attend. APTA will hold its first Industry Leader Summit in Washington, D.C. on November 27th through the 29th. The agenda includes an interesting track for board members, and several of you have registered. I encourage others to attend if you're able to do so. We also discussed setting our annual meeting schedule for the year, how many meetings are needed, and what committee meetings are needed in conjunction. More details to follow with that, and hopefully we can get into a bigger discussion with this committee as well, so we can set them, get them on our calendars. It's likely we'll move some of our regular reports around to align with the Board Ops Committee. Subjects and topics were discussed as we want to ensure that we have adequate time and the right forum for each of the issues that may require attention or require actual additional work. Mike Collins and Karen Basile provided a brief report on the budget planning for 2019-2010 fiscal year. This is advanced to the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee, and the topic will dominate the agenda for the next few weeks. It will be aligned with our advocacy for CDTA and on behalf of our statewide association. Advocacy reports will be made through the Community and Stakeholders Relation Committee. Nothing was discussed in executive session, and the next meeting of our committee will be held Tuesday, November 20th at 7:45 here at Watervliet. That concludes my report. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that or the committee itself? Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to Mr. Krishnan will give the report for Strategic and Operational Planning Committee.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Strategic and Operational Planning Committee met last Thursday, October 25th, here at 110 Watervliet Ave. There were no consent agenda items. We did have 2 administrative discussion items. First being the electric bus pilot update. Chris Desney and Lance Arcone provided a detailed progress update of our electric bus pilot. Several months ago, we discussed the concept of implementing a pilot to test the viability of integrating electric buses in our fleet. We discussed the challenges with the infrastructure at the facility, different types of charging stations, and electric bus technology itself. Staff has since engaged with our electrical contractor to assess the ability of 110 Watervliet Ave to support a small 4-bus pilot. We analyzed the current system and reviewed electrical usage data from past years. The recommendation is to make some upgrades to the existing infrastructure some of which National Grid would be responsible, and some CDTA. With the appropriate upgrades and monitoring tools, CDTA could support such a pilot. Details regarding the makes and models of the chargers and buses were discussed, along with a plan for procuring the equipment, which we anticipate bringing to the board possibly in December. It is important that key performance measures be identified and tested, as well as implementation of appropriate operational process changes. The second item discussed was an update on CDPHP cycle. Jonathan Scherzer gave an update on the CDPHP cycle. The history of the program since its inception in 2017 was reviewed. It was born of the Capital Region Bike Share Task Force and the RFP for services released in 2016. Social bicycles was chosen based on their experience, minimal infrastructure requirements, and simple pricing model. We partnered with CDPHP, as you know, to deploy the system with additional funding from our capital plan, membership fees, and CMAQ grant. Today, it includes 6,000 members and logged over 31,000 trips since July 2017. It has been an important component of CDTA's network, and we expect future growth in the next 12 to 24 months. There were no executive session items, and as Georgie mentioned, our next meeting will be the strategic planning retreat to be held on Thursday, December 6th, 8:30 here at 110 Watervliet Ave. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnan. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding that report?
What was it time again?
Of the retreat, 8:30.
Ms. Valentigo, we're going to move into the Community and Stakeholder Relations Committee report.
Okay, thank you very much. So we had our first ever Community and Stakeholder Relations Committee on Monday, this past Monday, October 29th. There were no consent agenda items, however, there were 3 administrative discussion items. The first was talking very generally about the objectives of the committee itself. Since this was the first meeting, we took a look at existing partnerships and community outreach and sort of what we're doing now, and focused on how to strengthen and deepen relationships within CDTA's 4-county service area. We're going to continue to do that work. Director of Corporate Communications, Jamie Watson, gave a report on community engagement and media relations efforts. Jamie also provided us an update on New Yorkers for Better Public Transit, which is an initiative led by the New York Public Transportation Association. New Yorkers for Better Public Transit is a grassroots coalition focusing attention on the need for greater investments to support additional and also better public transit service throughout New York State. The coalition is intended to educate elected officials, community leaders, customers, and supporters about transit in New York State. The second administrative discussion item, we received a update from Lisa Morello from Jackson Lewis on advocacy efforts and also an overview of the current legislative landscape. And then the third administrative discussion item, we discussed CDTA branding guidelines. So Director of Marketing Jonathan Scherzer provided an overview of the new branding guidelines that will be implemented company-wide. Over the last several years, CDTA has positioned itself as the region's mobility leader, providing transportation services and operational support throughout the area. Branding is critical to the evolution of CDTA from bus company to regional economic driver. Company assets will be updated, everything from business cards to advertisements, supervisor reports, etc., to give CDTA a more modern, updated, cohesive look and feel. This brand refresh will roll out over the coming months, working with each department on updating internal and external documents, forms, and marketing assets. This will be accompanied by a new system for branding verification, which will allow departments consistency and confidence that CDTA is represented in a coordinated fashion from employee work areas to mass market advertising. There were no executive session items, and our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, December 7th at 11:30 at 110 Watervliet Ave.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Move into the CEO report. Mr. Vizio.
Thank you. My report is in your packet. It starts with news of a memorandum of agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union 1321 on a new collective bargaining agreement. We'll talk about that in executive session shortly. But I wanted to highlight that this has been 4 months worth of work. Meetings, discussions, information sharing by the negotiating teams from the ATU and CDTA. Extremely tedious and difficult work, but always, I think, professional, congenial, and in the interest of achieving consensus. Really proud of our team. Our team represented themselves admirably, and I want to just give a special thanks to Mike Collins, who led our team. You all know Mike. It was always professional, identifying the way to reach consensus, but at the same time, looking for a reasonable and financially sound resolution. As I said, we'll have more information in the executive session, but I want to acknowledge our team and thank the ATU and their team for, sometimes these things can get out of hand. We weren't even close. It was always professional and cordial. I appreciate everybody's efforts. Brings us to Mike's actually favorite thing to do besides negotiate. The budget planning process for fiscal year, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but fiscal year 2020 is well underway. Our process is bottom up. It starts with, in each department, essentially they're justifying their work plan for the year, and then finance translates that into what we commonly refer to as draft documents, draft budgets that are shared in the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee, and we sort of whittle away at it as these two sides sort of meet up. It's probably as tedious and difficult as negotiating, because it's a little bit stretched out. But it really, the process I think has served us well in the past. It's flexible, it's adaptable, we can change it if funding sources change or if our budget needs change. So that's well underway, and it will continue. We'd like to have it wrapped up late February, early March. We shall see, depending on what's in front of us. We have a lot of challenges. Nothing new, nothing to be worried about, just have a lot of challenges. So aligned with that is our advocacy efforts that Jackie talked about a little bit in our committee report, and as she said, first ever. I think that in and of itself is an achievement. We've talked about this for a long, long time, and for a lot of reasons, all good. We were never able to get to where we are today. But we have a standalone committee that talks and discusses and listens and tries to make CDTA bigger and better. This is all about. So our advocacy efforts that we coordinate through Lisa Morella and her team at Jackson Lewis, and align and lockstep with our statewide association and their messaging at NIFTA is underway. You may have noticed in this morning's paper, and if you didn't, Times Union, Jamie will send it on this afternoon. In the perspective section, top of the fold, was a letter from Bill Carpenter, president of NIFTA, who was my counterpart in Rochester, advocating for a statewide transit plan and appropriate funding. So that in and of itself is an achievement. We're pleased that the Times Union thought it important enough to put it in perspective section, top fold. And it's really just step one in a multi-step process. So also I would encourage you to look at the coalition, which is on the NIFTA website. If you can, please sign up. We promise there won't be too many emails or alerts. And look at these support materials, and if you want to sign on to any of the support materials, feel free. We are now coordinating our effort to get our partners to do the same and our customers to do the same. As Mike just reported, Mike Rochon, we're now starting to advance the electric bus initiative. That's also something that we've kicked around and talked about for quite some time. We wanted to make sure that we knew what the steps were before we initiated them. As with all of our projects, not all the funding is there just yet to support the entire pilot, but prospects for that funding are there, and I think we're confident that we can take the next year, and it's going to take about a year, especially on the bus order side, to get that all moving. We anticipate bringing a package to the board through committee to purchase the 4 buses in December. The aforementioned NIPTA Fall Conference was completed last week. I think it was one of our better conferences, and it was better because I think the variety and depth of the sessions was as good as I have seen. And we had a very successful Transit Expo. We had about 70 vendors showing their wares, their products or services, in a very relaxed setting where you could walk around and talk to them and better understand what it was they were offering and how it could make your property better. But for me, what struck a chord and what made me proud was the number of sessions led by CDTA staff people. Dave talked about cutting edge. Dave talked about us being ahead of the curve. All you have to do is look at the agenda or pop your head into a room and see either one of our staff people leading a session or leading the discussion. Just makes you proud, and also our own Dave Stackrow was on a panel, 3 presenters.
They talked too long, there was no time for the panel.
Well, I'm not sure it was you. But Dave Stackrow, basically, Dave provided the sort of the outlook from Washington. Ron Epstein, Paul Karras, the DOT commissioner, provided the statewide perspective, and Steve Goodman from FTA Region 1 provided sort of the federal funding perspective. It was good to get those 3 voices in the room, 45 minutes or so, and get it done. I think our state association, there are a couple that might be better, might be deeper, might be more experienced, but I think our state association is top 5 for sure, and the sessions are really, really good. They're really interesting. So all good, but hats off to our staff who not only participate by attending sessions, but they participate by leading the sessions. I think October was pink. It comes to an end tomorrow. Or today, maybe October 31st. But basically everything was pink for the month, and that's part of our effort to support the American Cancer Society. We're also finishing up our employee giving campaign for the United Way of the Greater Capital Region. I can tell you that the campaign is well into 6 figures. It's just an amazing effort by our employees, both on the total number that they give and the per capita giving numbers. We're leaders in the capital region. And it's really, we try to have a little fun with these things. We try to build fun around the events, but we do it because our employees care and they want to be involved in these things. They not only participate and go to events, but they write checks or put money in the bin or the can. And we wouldn't do it if they didn't want to do that. But their involvement, their support, and their endorsement of the things we do are valuable. So it brings us back to the committee that Jackie's leading. We're talking a lot about stakeholders and stakeholder relations, and I think we can never, ever forget that our most important stakeholders are our employees. Because without them, not much is going to get done. So we always find ways to keep them active and involved in these things. As far as the activity report, you can tell by the length that there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's going to continue into November. With a real focus on our advocacy efforts. Lisa Morello and her team are doing a lot of this work on our behalf. We don't attend all the meetings that they do. We don't need to be there as often as they are, but their finger is on the pulse, I think, of state government. On October 4th, I attended the annual United Way awards breakfast. A number of us were at our table. But the great thing about the breakfast was our own Stephanie Bella, I gotta say that one slowly too, Bella Kapitsky and Justin Grigadis were recognized as Campaign Managers of the Year. So of all the United Way campaigns, of all the giving campaigns, those two were recognized as the best in the capital region. And all you have to do is look at our results to know why they were recognized. And again, if you watch what goes on here, it's not all about just handing, the United Way form out. They do way more than that. And that's why we're successful. It's a little bit of fun, a little bit of seriousness, and we don't just hand out the form. They do they spend a lot of time explaining where the money goes and why it's important. And then engaging in fun things like car washes, 50-50 raffles. I think we found the right mix here at CDTA to make those things work. October 5th was our annual fall festival where we turned the parking lots into a fall-themed environment. We had almost 500 elementary school students come through here with their teachers and their aides and their chaperones, and we had them interact with people from public safety, a lot of police, firefighters, and state police dive tank is here displaying their wares, and just very interesting when you start talking to 10 and 11-year-old or 9-year-old kids who this is the highlight not of their day, their week, their month. So this originally started out with just sort of getting to know our neighbors better, and it's sort of evolved into a fun day where our employees get to interact with school kids, mainly from the city of Albany, who are going to be our customers today and probably will be our customers tomorrow. So lots of great things going on there. Lots of meetings you'll see with government officials, pretty much at the state level, as we sort of lay the groundwork for what we're going to ask for in the governor's request in the governor's budget, and then the following legislative season. On the 18th, Jamie would be mad if I didn't tell you that we attended the CDTA Pink Bus Pull at Jacob and Anthony's in Stuyvesant Plaza. The pull consisted of 10 teams of 8 people who had to pull a pink CDTA bus a distance of about 30 feet, and they were timed. And the low time obviously wins. Half of those teams were CDTA teams, the CDTA employees, again, showing you how much they want to be involved in that. Unfortunately, they didn't win. We had a rogue entry at the last minute. The Albany basketball team. Coach Will Brown brought the team over to participate in the event. Coach Will Brown also showed up at an event with Cohoes City School District that we had the other day at 7 a.m. With his own son. So talk about a guy who's giving back. We've gotten to know him a little bit. But the bus pull was a big hit. We've got to find a way to build that into something more. We're working on that. Details to follow. We talked about Dave being here at the authority staff meeting. It's just important. It's important to me to see our staff get to talk to Dave in a relaxed format. Most people know Dave. Most people can walk up and talk to Dave. He's certainly not a guy who's going to keep anybody away. But to have him talk to 60 or 70 staff people about the activities after, I think is really great. As part of the NIPTA luncheon, I apologize here for the length of this report, but some of this stuff I think we really have to just at least throw out there quickly. Every 2 years, NIPTA inducts people into the Hall of Fame. These are industry veterans, many of whom are people who were mentors, I can tell you, to me and Mike Collins and a number of other people here in the room. The 4 inductees this year were Frank Kablisky, who had CEO job. He was a CEO at CNY Central in Syracuse. Hillary Ring, who ran the government relations unit here in Albany for the MTA in New York City. You may not know that MTA has a very large government relations staff. Half of whom are here, half of whom are in New York City. Hillary ran that unit for many years. Cynthia Ruiz, who was the CEO for Dutchess and Ulster County. She represented the smaller rural systems whose voice has become much more prominent at NIPTA because of her work. And last but not least, and if any of you have gone to APTA conferences, you know this guy, Gord Nevison. Gord has been a sales representative for a lot of companies in transit, but I think some of us remember him most when he started Orion Bus Industries way back before New Flyers and Gilligs and Novas. We bought buses from Orion Bus, which was the American side of the business, was based in Oriskany, New York. And Jamie may or may not remember, but our contact through the state government to purchase those buses was one Ray Gillen. That's how I got to know Ray many years ago. But it was fun to see those guys and gal, singular, inducted into the hall. Last but not least, yesterday, a number of us attended the Red Cross Awards breakfast at the Hilton Garden Inn over in Troy. Georgie was with us, Jamie, Dave, several of our staff. We were recognized, you may remember about a year ago, the city of Cohoes had a devastating fire in the downtown. The Red Cross contacted us, as did the city of Cohoes officials, to send buses actually, it was more than one, to be warming stations. And we do that a lot. Frankly, we don't tell people about it, we just do it. But in this case, it was intended originally for the media, but it ended up being a warming area for law enforcement. I can tell you a number of firefighters were on board those buses. And then at the end of the day, in a couple of days, it was people who were homeless because of the fire, who ended up spending time on the bus. It became a food haven, it became water and coffee. And we were recognized for that. So Joe Belinsky and Elton Main from the Troy Division is where the buses came from. They were the men and women who made sure the bus was there every day. It was lit. It was on. It was operational. They did all that work, so they accepted the award on our behalf. So a real fun environment to hear. There were some great stories. I wanted to know about babies being born on the side of the road. That was the room to be in. But it's great to conclude the month with such special recognition.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Bazile?
Apologize for the length.
We are going into executive session. I seek motion to go into executive session to discuss the collective bargaining. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.